The Hidden History of the Human Race, Part 1. You're listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents to Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Ewers Plateau. And this week we have a very special guest. Well, sort of. Not really a guest. I mean, he's actually mostly here every show. But this time he's actually in the studio with us, the Watcher. For once, not deep beneath the secret space station in secret outer space, but actually here in the cube. So welcome, buddy. Glad to have you back.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
I feeling a little off. The pressure in the space station's much like gravity. It varies, and having this steady one atmosphere is kind of throwing me off.
You're not floating in your tin can. That's the problem.
I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have a bag of chips.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, so we're starting the book report. We've actually been planning this book report for, what, months now?
Yeah, since before the, right before we started doing the Uncharted Snakes.
That's right, yeah. So the Swapcast with Ben kind of, well, first we thought we were going to be doing those every week, and then Ben decided that he needed to do them every other week, and now we're probably still going to be doing some of those, but at least this time he's asked for a 2-week break, because it does put a lot of pressure on him, because he has to prepare the videos and the images for each show, and then he's the one that records the whole thing. So Kyle and I we just a couple of douchebags come in here and sit down and watch the whole thing, and we're like, wow, that looks really cool, bro. And then he has to do all the work. So then when we're done, he has to prepare the video and then send it over to us. So it's a lot of work for him. And but yeah, he wants to do more. He's planning more. He's been talking to me about it, but I think we're going to be taking more breaks. And anyway, we just decided start the book report anyway.
Yeah.
You know, so some weeks there may be a Swapcast, but we're just going to be doing the book report, and I don't think it'll matter. But yeah, I've been looking forward to doing this book. This book was changed my life. Like many of these book reports we've done, like we've been choosing these books that are like at the top of my list of like, this is what made me start really.
Well, you gave me this book
a
long time ago, and it blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I was the one that suggested it
That's right.
on the show. Yeah.
You're right. You're like, we should do this book. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the Hidden History of the Human Race is the abridged version of Forbidden Archaeology.
Yeah, forbidding archaeology.
Forbidding. Yeah, he says that's what people call it, because it's 900 pages. It's like this giant tome, Forbidding Archaeology. But yeah, so this one's abridged, and basically what's taken out of it are all the massive amounts of references. Mm-hmm. So this one just basically contains the story, but it's fantastic. So
yeah, so if you're a hardcore Skirp and don't trust the stuff in the book, then go get the
900
unabridged version.
Yeah. That's right.
It has all the citations and
That's
everything.
right. Read that twice and call us in the morning.
That's right.
If you're a Skirp, right? Isn't that what you doctors say?
Don't call us at all.
Yeah, and so what else? We got the agricultural update. We've been planting.
Yep. We've planted we've planted over half an acre.
Yeah.
Since Monday. Or wait, when did they show up?
Tuesday.
The vines were late.
Yeah.
And then they were late again.
Yeah.
And then our boss eventually drove to the terminal in San Antonio and picked them up.
Yeah.
And they finally got there. And then, we've been...
And it's cool because these are dormant, right? So
yeah,
I was kind of showing some people in the Discord what's going on, but there were questions.
Yeah.
So 2 things that people are asking about. Number one, the vines are... so we buy them in a young state. Before this year, we bought them and they were already budding out, right? So vines would show up alive, basically. They would have some shoots.
Yeah, green potted.
Yeah, green potted. They in little bitty pots with leaves, you know.
Yeah.
And what would you say, like 1.5 feet tall total from bottom of the pot to the top of the leaf. And that's like...
Has its own difficulties.
It has difficulties, yeah. Number one... it's easy to break those new shoots, so you can damage them.
Yeah, and you want to plant them later in the season, and it's more hot.
Yeah, it is.
Because you don't want them to get a frost.
Yeah.
So you want to do it after the last frost, and then because they're typically coming from out of state, you have to acclimate them, and they can wilt, and so it's really delicate situation in trying to get them acclimated, and then
Yeah. So the other question is like, why aren't we just planting seeds, Guy? Like, what's the big deal?
because we have a rootstock that is been bred to withstand the various pathogens and things, and problems that we have in the area that make it not very good for growing grapes.
Right. So the variety,
they're resistant to lots of things, and they do good in our type of soil and this and that. So various things, and they're always working on this, and so we do soil tests, and we've kind of learned like what our local microclimate situation is. So we buy that rootstock for this situation that we're in, and then they graft a variety like Merlot or Cabernet Sauvignon or something that everybody's familiar with, that is good for making wine, to that rootstock.
Yeah.
So
the rootstock is a vine itself, but it's not a grapevine.
It's Vitis vinifera.
Yeah.
It's the same genus, but
I'll allow it.
I'm looking at the watcher.
I'll allow it.
Yeah, that's the genus and species.
Yeah. So, okay, it's both, right? But we already know the vagaries of species.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's a good book
so
title.
yeah, it's that's why we don't grow them from seeds, because we'd grow this European varietal and it would die.
Yeah.
So we have to have the.
So they're grafted, and so they're basically made in a place where they specialize in this.
Yeah.
They specialize in getting the rootstock and growing it healthy, and then they graft the variety you want, the varietal you want, to that rootstock, such that you have the roots and then 8 inches of rootstock trunk, and then there's a graft that has healed and repaired itself and has become successful in where the variety has now got the variety you want of wine grape has now got some buds.
Yeah, so the bare root, when you buy them like this, they're bare roots. They're completely taken out of the soil and washed off.
Yeah.
What they do is they graft it onto the planted rootstock, and then they let it grow for an entire season.
Yeah.
And then it goes dormant, and then once it's fully dormant, then they cut it off down to a few buds.
Yeah.
And then they have a machine that goes and digs them all up, and they cut the
without
roots
damaging
off.
the roots. Yeah.
Yeah, and they wash them off, and
Yeah.
so it's
So that's how we've received them, is in bundles of dormant.
you have to order them a
sticks.
year early.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, it's hard planting them, but we've got a system down, and it's working pretty good.
Yep. So that's the agricultural update.
Farming grapes.
All right, let's go ahead and do Space Weather News from spaceweather.com. A geomagnetic unrest expected. Minor geomagnetic unrest is expected on March 18th when a co-rotating interaction region disturbs Earth's magnetic field. They say this is called a CIR, co-rotating interaction region. These are transition zones between fast and slow-moving solar wind streams. Plasma piles up in these regions, creating shock-like density gradients that often do a good job of sparking auroras. That's interesting. I mean, I've never heard that term before, I think. So that's a new one.
Yeah.
Co-rotating.
That's why I'm not in space right now. I mean, it worked out. It was convenient for the schedule. But.
Yeah, exactly. So solar wind speed is 328.6 kilometers per second. Density is 7.3 protons per cubic centimeter. We have 23 sunspots right now.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah. And let's see. Neutron count is 8.8% above the space age average, which is rated as high. And the KP index is 1, quiet. And the 24-hour max for the KP was 2. So it's been quiet. So that co-rotating whatever still isn't doing a whole lot of stuff. But yeah, 24. I'll be excited to see what the sunspot counts are going to be as solar cycle 25 ramps up.
Yeah,
because I mean we're just now coming out of the minimum, and we've got 24 and 18. So like, what is it going to be like when it's at its maximum? There are going to be hundreds of them.
72.
72.
There's got to be more than that. Hey man, it might be a pretty severe one, according to some scientists.
That's right.
And yeah, speaking of the climate, a gigantic iceberg broke off from Antarctica. And yeah, enough said. Oh no, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh yeah, the Gulf Stream is at its weakest in over 1,000 years.
All right.
And this was cool. I don't know if you guys saw this story, but the asteroid dust in the Chicxulub crater finally seals the deal on the dino extinction.
Oh yeah.
So now it's standard model, because I don't know if anybody was aware, but there was still a raging debate.
Still a debate, yeah,
as to whether or not that was an impact that caused
nanodiamonds. Just isn't enough.
Yep, asteroid dust. So yeah, check that story out.
Someone may still argue that a volcano belched out the asteroid dust from way before, and that's why.
Yeah, could be.
It's not over yet.
But the thing I really want to read today is from our favorite scriptard sites, phys.org. And actually, this was a story that was shared to the Brothers of the Serpent Gmail account by a listener. Thank you very much. I had actually found this story from our good buddy Phil Plate down at Bad Astronomy.
Yeah.
I was going to read that one, but yeah, the phys.org one is a little more thorough in terms of, I think, explaining all of this stuff, whereas just some snarky, haha, it's not aliens from the old Phil Plate. Not really, but kind of. So it says, in 2017, the first interstellar object from beyond our solar system, a little redundant, was discovered via the Pan-STARRS Astronomical Observatory in Hawaii. It was named Oumuamua, I think that's how you pronounce it, meaning scout or messenger in Hawaiian. The object was like a comet, but with features that were just odd enough to defy classification. Two Arizona State University astrophysicists, Stephen Desch and Alan Jackson, of the School of Earth and Country Music, set out to explain the odd features of Oumuamua and have determined that it is likely a piece of a Pluto-like planet from another solar system. Their findings have been recently published in a pair of papers in the AGU Journal of Geophysical Research. So this is a quote. In many ways, Oumuamua resembled a comet, but it was peculiar enough in several ways that mystery surrounded its nature and speculation ran rampant about what it was, said Desch, who is a professor in the School of Earth and Space Exploration. From observations of the object, Desch and Jackson determined several characteristics of the object that differed from what would be expected from a comet. In terms of speed, the object entered the solar system at a velocity a bit lower than would be expected, indicating that it had not been traveling in interstellar space for more than 1 billion years or so. In terms of size, its pancake shape was also more flattened than any other known solar system object. How do they know? Yeah,
well, Abby, I remember when I was listening to Abby Loeb talk about this on both Joe Rogan and on Lex Friedman's podcast. He said that the artists always depicted as this long cigar shape, but the most likely shape it was like a disc.
Disc, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I was thinking of like the speed. They're like, well, it could have been there for
I mean,
1 billion years.
yeah, if 1 billion years, like that's stacks of assumptions.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
So disc-shaped, like someone threw a frisbee at the sun?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and it explains all this.
Flying saucer.
Ridiculous.
So they also observed that while the object acquired a slight push away from the sun, and in parentheses, a rocket effect common in comets as sunlight vaporizes the ices they are made of, the push was stronger than could be accounted for.
Yeah.
Finally, the object lacked a detectable escaping gas, which is usually depicted by visibly depicted visibly by a comet's tail. In all, the object was very much like a comet, but unlike any comet that had ever been observed in the solar system.
Yeah.
Desch and Jackson then hypothesized that the object was made of different ices, and they calculated how quickly these ices would sublimate as Oumuamua passed by the sun. From there, they calculated the rocket effect, the object's mass and shape, and the reflectivity of the ices. And so Desch says, that was an exciting moment for us. We realized that a chunk of ice would be much more reflective than people were assuming, which meant it could be smaller. The same rocket effect would then give Oumuamua a bigger push, bigger than comets usually experience. Desch and Jackson found one ice in particular, solid nitrogen, that provided an exact match to all the object's features simultaneously. And since solid nitrogen ice can be seen on the surface of Pluto, it is possible that a comet-like object could be made of the same material. And Jackson says, we knew we had hit on the right idea when we completed the calculation for what albedo, or how reflective the body is, would make the motion of Oumuamua match the observations. That value came out as being the same as we observe on the surface of Pluto or Triton, bodies covered in nitrogen ice. So they then calculated the rate at which chunks of solid nitrogen ice would have been knocked off the surfaces of Pluto and similar bodies early in our solar system's history. And they calculated the probability that chunks of solid nitrogen ice from other solar systems would reach ours. Jackson says, it was likely knocked off the surface by an impact about 500 million years ago and thrown out of its parent system. Being made of frozen nitrogen also explains the unusual shape of Oumuamua. As the outer layers of nitrogen ice evaporated, the shape of the body would have become more progressively flattened, just like a bar of soap does as the outer layers get rubbed off through use. So in other words, like if it starts out with where it's like, if it's not perfectly spherical to start with, if it has like a little bit of a, what do you call it? Obliquity or something. I don't know what it's called.
Oblate.
Oblate.
It's long.
Yeah. Then it's going to wear on those sides and become more and more flattened over time. So they say.
Yeah. But they could, like, the problem was that they couldn't see so they're saying that nitrogen gas would be hard to detect.
Yeah, I suppose. Maybe they get into that further on. I didn't read the whole story.
Okay.
It's cold read.
Cold read.
Although Oumuamua's comet-like nature was quickly recognized, the inability to immediately explain it in detail led to speculation that it is a piece of alien technology. As in the recently published book, Extraterrestrial, The First Signs of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth by Avi Loeb of Harvard University. This has sparked a public debate about the scientific method and the responsibility of scientists not to jump to unwarranted conclusions. Desch says, everybody is interested in aliens, and it was inevitable that this first object outside the solar system would make people think of aliens. But it is important in science not to jump to conclusions like we have. It took 2 or 3 years to figure out a natural explanation. A chunk of nitrogen ice that matches everything we know about Oumuamua. That's not that long in science, and far too soon to say we had exhausted all natural explanations. So I guess 3 years, and he's saying 3 years is not long enough.
Not too long.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that the argument he's making is Avi doesn't jump. I don't know. From what I've heard from him, he doesn't jump to the conclusion. He says the problem is that none of them will even consider the possibility that it could have been alien technology.
Right, yeah.
The jumping to conclusions is like...
They are jumping to conclusions.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I shouldn't accuse them of that, but
yeah, I mean they're trying to figure out how can it be a natural object.
Right. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Figure that out first, and if you've exhausted all
if you've exhausted all possibilities and you still haven't found a way for it to be a natural object, you still insist that it was probably a natural object. That's been their path through this.
Well, and you don't run any risk of taking what you find and making it fit the conclusion that you've already made.
Yeah.
Because that's not a thing.
Yeah. Not at all. Never a thing.
Shall I go on?
Yeah.
Although there is no evidence that it is alien technology, as a fragment of a Pluto-like planet, Oumuamua has provided scientists with a special opportunity to look at extrasolar systems in a way that they have not been able to do before. As more objects like Oumuamua are found and studied, scientists can continue to expand our understanding of what other planetary systems are like and the ways in which they are similar to or different from our own solar system.
Yeah, and so if it is a piece of alien tech, they're going to be plugging in data that they got from that thing into what they think about other solar systems.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's like, you don't know what it is.
Right.
That was what I was just thinking also, that you're assuming already it's a chunk of ice. You just said it, and now you're going to use this chunk of ice to determine stuff about other chunks of ice in lots of other places when you don't know if it's a chunk of ice. Stacks on stacks.
That's right. Classic.
Yeah, and the other thing I thought about when they were talking about the outgassing, right? I'm assuming they're thinking that you just wouldn't see the nitrogen.
Yeah, that's what they said about because somebody postulated that it could be frozen hydrogen, I think. Or maybe it was nitrogen. I don't remember, but there was an argument that it was a piece of very cold gas. I thought it was hydrogen.
Okay, so my thought was those gases would be much more volatile, right?
Yeah.
So when they came close to the sun, they should be exploding.
Yeah, it should be gone.
Because, I mean, if there's any impurities in there,
yeah,
like the things are going to be exploding out of there. And it's just like, it seems like you might see a fragmentary tail on it.
yeah, and it shouldn't survive the passage around the sun, right? It shouldn't.
Maybe. I don't know.
Shouldn't survive it. I mean, would nitrogen gas survive getting close enough?
Apparently they think so.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
based on their calculations and probability, their probability calculations.
Pluto has nitrogen gas.
They have no idea what it's like being close to the sun. Their closest what's the satellite that's observing the sun from
Yeah, the sun probe.
millions of kilometers away? The sun probe.
Sun probe.
Sun probe, 2 million miles away, closest ever.
Touch the sun. All right, so Desh says this research is exciting in that we've probably resolved the mystery of what Oumuamua is, and we can reasonably identify it as a chunk of an exo-Pluto, a Pluto-like planet in another solar system. Until now, we've had no way to know if other solar systems have Pluto-like planets, but now we have seen a chunk of one pass by Earth.
Wait a minute. So
Okay.
now that they need this thing to be the thing that it has to be for them to be able to explain it, Pluto's a planet again?
Okay, I have to say,
Pluto-like planets.
yeah, I have to say that's cool. I think that's cool. Their research was good.
Yeah.
They're coming up with ideas. But that end statement there, he's like, now that we know what it is,
Yeah.
now we can explain other things. You know, I mean, come on, man.
Well, he says we've probably resolved the mystery.
probably resolved
Yeah.
it, which means they've
Which is,
In
definitely
other words, based on their
resolved it.
probability calculations, that's the most likely thing.
Yeah. Well, you know, it'll be quoted endlessly from now on to prove that it wasn't an alien spaceship or that it was a piece of a Pluto-like planet or whatever. Like, that's probably exactly what our good buddy Phil Plait was doing in his blog post.
Yeah, he was also saying that, like, we've never seen one before, and, you know, it's... I think he was saying something like, it probably happens all the time.
Yeah.
You know,
And they barely caught this one. It was already on its way out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just like, well, we'll have better technology and we'll be seeing these more often.
Yeah.
Which
is
he could be
probably
totally right
true,
about
yeah.
that. But yeah, his introductory statement was just like, you know, this thing, there's been various theories, and, you know, he lists the first theory and he's like, probably not. And then he lists the second theory and he's like, probably not. And then he lists the aliens theory and he's like, no.
definitely not.
He just says no.
Okay.
That's just classic, dude.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Old Skirps.
Yeah.
Gotta love them.
Yep. So there you go.
Well, that's good.
Thanks for the tip, Snake Force.
Yeah. So you got more? Or are we doing emails?
Oh, we can go to email. I already read the other 3 stories, or however many it was.
Okay.
I want to do something on the Pacific Decadal Oscillation next episode, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, and the economics update. Bitcoin is right now at $59,047.71.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. And Ethereum is 1,832.49 per coin. There's your economics update.
Seems like the economy's doing okay.
Yeah.
Or wait, does it mean the economy's going to
I don't know.
It's kind of like the sun update.
Yeah. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, eventually.
We'll
Let's
find
just-
patterns and just assign them randomly to things.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's why it was raining today.
Yeah.
Bitcoin was at almost 60,000.
What's Bitcoin's proton density?
That's a good question. Okay. So a couple of emails. What time? How much time we got? Yeah, we only got 5 minutes.
We got this.
Okay.
We got some sand left.
Yeah, we do have sand left. All right, this one is called Hey Snake Bros, and it's from Wayne.
What's up, bro?
He says, I just wanted to say that I really enjoy your podcast and your approach to asking questions about all things UFO, paranormal, and fringe science. I am a high school science teacher in the discipline of Earth and space science. So just about every subject you cover, especially with Randall and crew, I'm listening on the edge of my seat. I've enjoyed your podcast so much that not only have I ordered and received my first official Snakes podcast t-shirt, I'm still waiting for my Uncharted X shirt from Ben. Ooh. I am now starting my own podcast, mainly focusing on the paranormal and UFOs in Michigan, and would love to have you both on as one of my first guests in the near future.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Totally down. I am completely enthralled by astronomy, sacred geometry, and the Younger Dryas impact theory, and have been following it for the better part of 3 years now. One of the exercises I do with my students is I have them hold their thumb up to the sky and block out Nibiru. No, that's not what he says. Sorry. And focus on their thumbnail. Then I tell them, in that 1 by 1 centimeter area of your thumbnail projected onto outer space, you would find close to 10,000 galaxies. So how can we say there isn't somewhere else out there with life on it?
Man, that's
cool.
a great point.
Anyway, love the podcast and glad you guys made it through Snowmageddon, Texas 2021. And I look forward to many more podcasts in the future. The music is great as well. You should put all of your bumper music and songs on a CD, as I think the quality of those tunes are just that good. Thanks, Wayne. And P.S. Congrats on the new Snakeling and PSS Snakes!
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll put them on a CD. And then I'll just leave that CD somewhere. No, buddy, we've talked about that multiple times. I know. I need to.
Kyle knows, yeah.
I need to publish
We've got to finish this project first. The album project.
There's a few projects.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get the album done.
Yeah.
Not to nitpick, I prefer Icepocalypse.
You like Icepocalypse better than Snowmageddon?
Snowmageddon. But I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Tomato, tomato.
Right. Icepocalypse is pretty good.
I think both of those would make a good, ice cream treat name. Icepocalypse and Snowmageddon.
Yeah. Yeah. Sleetaclism, maybe? It's hard to say. Sleetaclism. Okay.
I just call it the Ice Age. Like, whenever I'm talking to Laura, I'm just like, now that we made it through the Ice Age.
We made it through the Ice Age.
Like, back during the Ice Age. That's what I call it.
Okay, this one is from Jeff. I don't know if it's the Jeff. Is this the Jeff? No, it's not the Jeff. So it's called Serapium Hypothesis. Dear Snake Bros, love the podcast. Found you through Randall Carlson's podcast and have been enjoying both podcasts very much. Since then, you've introduced me to Where Did the Road Go and Uncharted X, so I'm definitely happy to have found a group of highly intelligent, uneducated individuals that are interested in the same things as myself. Hey, the watcher is actually educated, so we do have a representative of the academe something on the show.
I mean, most of it has no relevance to what we talk about. So,
but sometimes it's really relevant.
Right, fair enough.
I mean, that's always good. Is when we start talking about genetics, and you're like, guys, stop saying dumb things and let me tell you how this works.
That's right.
So he says, I'm one of those strange people who prefer reading, and the older the text, the better. One fascinating book I've read recently is the Colbrin Text. It hasn't been verified by academia, but that just makes me trust it more. Honestly, having read it, I don't see how it could be a fake, but I won't go into all the reasons why I think that. Anyways, in a few places, it talks about being initiated into the sacred mysteries, which takes place underground in, quote, great stone chambers of initiation within the tomb of stone, unquote. It gives quite an explanation of the process and purpose. The goal was to go to the afterlife. Basically, they wanted an out-of-body, self-induced near-death experience. They would get jacked up on hallucinogenics and booze and then were wrapped up like a mummy and left in one of those stone boxes underground for a week. They would go to the other side, the afterlife, and when they came back, they were considered twice born and enlightened. Sometimes they died and didn't come back at all. I just listened to your recent podcast where you read a letter from a guy who said the false doors in the Serapeum were possibly like crystals to refract a spirit or something like that. I didn't understand the mechanics of what he was trying to explain, but it definitely adds to my hypothesis. Long story short, I believe the boxes in the Serapeum were for initiating people into the sacred mysteries and were used for inducing these death experiences. If you want to read the description of this initiation process in the stone boxes, check out the Colbrin. I think Randall Carlson may know something about this book. Book of Sons of Fire, Chapter 2, and the Book of Scrolls, Chapter 6. There are many other references to the initiation into the mysteries and the stone chambers of initiation in the Colbrin, but these two chapters give the fullest descriptions. After having read the Colbrin and realizing what it was talking about, I found a book by Freddie Silva called The Lost Art of Resurrection, Initiation, Secret Chambers, and the Quest for the Otherworld. Apparently, this underground, self-induced, near-death experience initiation into the sacred mysteries was common and widespread in those days. It's a good book. You should check it out. I run into lots of other old texts that confirm the possibility that this was the case, but I can't remember them all. One last thought, and this is a bit crazy, but you could talk to your friends at Where Did the Road Go to see what they think about it, since they seem to know quite a bit about astral traveling. I personally don't astral travel, so I'm not sure how easy it is to manipulate matter from the astral plane, but I don't think matter weighs much there. If the Egyptians and the ancients were so adept at out-of-body traveling, could they have possibly manipulated the massive stone blocks, both carving them and moving them, from the astral plane? I don't think this is likely. It's just a crazy idea, like I said. However, I'm fairly convinced the stone boxes in the Serapeum and other sites around Egypt were used for initiation into the sacred mysteries as a means to escape the body in a controlled setting. And again, love the podcast. Keep up the good work and the great content. Snacks! From Jeff.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So that just made me want to know the etymology of the word tomb. And it's kind of circular. Let's see.
I'll use
Okay,
this gap to,
Go ahead.
Well, from Greek, timbos, which means burial mound, grave, tomb. There's another one that is, let's see, from Wiktionary, from Middle English, tomb, spelled with an E, or tombe, Toumbe, borrowed from Old French tomb, Tombe, from the Latin tumba, from ancient Greek, tumbos, a sepulchral mound, tomb, grave. Probably from Proto-Indo-European tu, T-E-W-H, which means to swell.
Which is the name for the mounds, the tombs.
The mound.
Yeah.
Right? Like in some of the other ones I was like scrolling through, it was saying mound. Well, yes.
Yeah.
Mound. So it's like the etymology.
Because there's grave mounds, right, that are
Right.
called tombs, and they're,
But it's like the etymology of the word is tomb.
yeah.
But anyway, the only thing I can see of like where it might have come from is from a mound. And then you think about the pyramids.
Yeah, and
Built
it's built
on
on the
some
mound.
ancient mound.
Yeah.
Whatever. But yeah, it's weird.
interesting.
What?
So did it
Usually
have
the etymology-
like a long time ago? Did this idea have a different meaning?
Yeah.
Like we
Because-
call them tombs now, and we think that's where you bury dead people, but maybe
Right, because the definition is obviously where you bury dead people, but
Yeah.
where did the word
come
You know,
from?
That's
Yeah.
kind of what.
Yeah, it's kind of unsatisfying. Like, don't use the word you're defining in the definition.
yeah. That's right. Well, I think that this guy had some other good ideas. They could be. I don't know. I get stuck on the precision of the interiors. You know, I mean, do you need like this perfect box to have an astro? Maybe you do.
Does it need to be that big and that heavy to hold a dude singular?
Right. It doesn't need to be that big. I mean, unless you're, I don't know. I mean, did they put the whole bed in there? You know, like
I mean, it's possible. Can you only travel with a bowl?
I don't know. It's I guess maybe just it's my nature.
Yeah.
I lean towards the technology.
To be swollen is where they think it's perhaps akin to the Latin tumere, T-U-M-E-R-E, to be swollen. So a swelling hill, potbelly hill.
All our
So
graves
workout
are
guy
flat.
probably understands this. He's getting swole, right?
Swole, yeah.
It's tomb, bro.
You tuning up, dude?
All right. I know we're over time, but I got one more Serapium box email here, and then we'll finish up. What?
All right.
You got something?
Well, yeah, going back to the last email, is he trying to say that on the astral plane, matter doesn't matter?
I think that's probably why it was confusing for me to read.
Yeah.
But yeah, and matter doesn't weigh as much, but matter doesn't matter.
Yeah, matter doesn't matter.
Yep. All right, this one's from Mark. He says, safety deposit Serapium boxes. Hey, Snake Bros. Quick note on the Serapium boxes. I know the boxes seem all woo-woo mysterious and whatnot, but what if the purpose is somewhat more mundane, simple, and capitalistic? I think you will agree that the Egyptian society was stratified from workers to upper class. To me, those boxes look like storage warehouses, or better yet, safety deposit boxes for rich people, although the interior precision is a mystery. Could it be that the false door-like things on the outside functioned as some sort of key unique to each box? Put something on the false door slots, vibrate it just right, and the top slips off. Maybe the interior precision is necessary for the locking function, and the scooped-out parts on the top are necessary tuning for your key. My guess is there were most probably rich people in those times, and they needed to store stuff safely away from would-be thieves. What better than a big box underground, guarded by bank employees, but you have your own key. Then, for whatever reason, when the shit hit the fan, everyone cleared out their safety deposit boxes and moved on.
Except one guy who had already done it a long time ago.
Yeah. Just trying to put a simple contemporary spin on something that on the surface seems mysterious, although their technology for lock and key is unknown to us. So, yeah. I don't know. Could be. It could be that they were as simple as storage boxes, whether it was safety deposit for rich people or what. But I love all the ideas and theories. Like, I love the fact that the site makes you do this. I've got to have an answer.
So I'm going to give everyone an example before we end this segment of why it is I'm normally only in a chat window.
Oh, no.
So if there's safety deposit boxes, the Egyptians obviously were aliens because aliens mutilate cows and some dude stored a bull in his safety deposit box. Mystery solved.
And yeah, and I think the bull remains were actually found in the little, like one of the little ones.
I thought they were found in a completely different place.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
He wasn't
yeah.
super
it was like
rich.
it was
He
like
was
a
just-
copy.
Yeah.
But yeah,
He wasn't like-
yeah. The aliens weren't super rich.
He wasn't
like-
oil rich. He was like cattle rancher rich.
Yep.
All right.
I still think that the precision interior and lack of precision exterior is
these
yet to be explained by any of these.
and the scoopy scoops on the outside. You know, I just if it is a safety deposit, if it's something that isn't going to move, why do you need to scoop out the?
yeah, well, his deal was that the key required the vibration and all this. Kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Doesn't explain how they have the technology to do what they did.
Right. I do think he's hinting at unknown technology. He says
Yeah,
the
yeah.
key technology is unknown to us. So yeah. So you're still making it mysterious woo-woo, bro.
Tuning scoops.
Yeah, you're like, listen, man, it was totally capitalistic, normal, mundane, like strange, magical safety deposit boxes that open by vibration keys. I mean, I think you're still going woo with that answer. But all right, break time. Take a break.
So this has got to be like 5 or 6 maybe people who have written in their ideas about the Serapeum, and
Yeah.
we've trashed everyone. So, it's becoming a thing.
You're all wrong.
Send us your ideas about the Serapeum so that we can trash them on air. No, really, it's cool, but I don't know. I am completely baffled by this, by that site, and all of the details about it are just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still think I'm gonna say that I still think it's the use is unknown, the purpose is unknown.
Yeah.
And maybe it's completely, like Ben says, completely out of our realm of
Possibility of understanding.
Yeah. That's kind of where
I think that's where I'm at too.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I won't think about what it could be.
No, I tried to do it
Because I've seen people say that too, like, well, you've decided that you can't know. And no.
No.
And we still think about it. But
yeah. And I like hearing the ideas.
yeah,
too.
I do too.
I mean,
especially being able to destroy them.
my natural inclination is to freaking skirp them, right? I was like, let me figure out how it's wrong. It's just, I'm doing my job, man.
Yeah.
And I'm opening a beer
All right.
because this
Coors
is a book
Light?
report.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Coors Light.
Yeah. We don't have any Brewmaster beers. We
No,
drank
but
them all.
He did send us a lot. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting you to continue sending me beers.
I am.
Okay.
Expecting him to
I've never
continue
tasted
sending
one.
Kyle beers.
I've never tasted one.
Yeah,
Gotta get
that's
more.
true. See, well, I mean, you're never out here.
I'll send him my space address.
There you go. All right, so a couple things about this book. First, I'll have to start off saying, because the book is looking at sites around the world and scientists from around the world and from throughout, the past couple hundred years.
You're not going to be able to pronounce a lot of
there's
stuff.
plenty of names that I'm going to completely butcher. So just like turn off all the homo correctus, okay? I mean, you can tell me how it's supposed to be said, but don't expect me to get it right. I don't expect me to get it right. And one interesting thing about this, because it's the abridged version, it was published years after the original one came out, is he's actually been keeping track of the responses. He's got a whole website actually dedicated to the response to forbidden archaeology. And I've gone through it and read, like, he's posted pages and pages of text of people arguing with each other, and enormous letters he's gotten that are responses to the book that are either for or against what he's trying to do, and interesting stuff. So in the beginning of this book, he's got a couple of those things, which is basically he's got some of the praise for and the skirps against. So I'm going to read a couple of the things that are in the praise here. This first one is from Dr. Michael Rothstein from the University of Copenhagen in Denmark. He says,
It's Rothstein.
Thanks, homo correct. The book is a detective novel as much as a scholarly tour de force. But the murderer is not the butler, neither is the victim a rich old man with many heirs. The victim is man himself, and the role of the assassin is played by numerous scientists. The book takes this case to court and asks the reader to judge for himself. And there's another one from Dr. Philip E. Johnson, University of California at Berkeley, author of Darwin on Trial. A remarkably complete review of all the evidence concerning human origins, including the evidence that has been ignored because it does not fit the dominant paradigm. And just one more I've marked here on the positives. This one's from the Journal of Field Archaeology. Michael Cremo, a research associate in history and philosophy of science, and Richard Thompson, a mathematician, challenged the dominant views of human origins and antiquity. This volume combines a vast amount of both accepted and controversial evidence from the archaeological record with sociological, philosophical, and historical critiques of the scientific method to challenge existing views and expose the suppression of information concerning history and human origins. I was impressed. I mean, that's from the Journal of Field Archaeology. That's
Wow.
cool. And here's some from the Skirps. From Richard Lakey, anthropologist. Your book is pure humbug and does not deserve to be taken seriously by anybody but a fool. Sadly, there are some, but that's a part of the selection, and there's nothing that can be done.
Is he referring to natural selection?
I don't know.
Because apparently it's not working if there's a bunch of fools.
And this one's from W.W. Howells, physical anthropologist. I mean, like, I noticed when I was going through all the SCRPs, they're all anthropologists. It's interesting. Whereas in the other one, there were anthropologists that were for it, but a lot of the people who are mad are anthropologists. Anyway, he says, to have modern human beings appearing a great deal earlier, in fact, at a time when even simple primates did not exist as possible ancestors, would be devastating not only to the accepted pattern, it would be devastating to the whole theory of evolution.
And devastating to my paycheck.
That's kind of the point of the book. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, so
I missed it.
it's devastating to his paycheck.
Oh, okay. It's not written on the screen. I can't go back later. Start laughing in 5 minutes.
So yeah, Cremo is Thompson started doing the research, and Cremo was like the author. But on both books, they have both their names. So it's by Michael Cremo and Richard Thompson. So yeah, but according to what I've read, Cremo says that Thompson was doing all this research and then asked him, like, hey, will you join me in both researching and then find a way to put this together into a book?
Well,
Couldn't
have found a better guy.
I know, yeah. Okay, so another thing I like to do with these book reports is read the forewords, if there are any. And there is one here from Graham Hancock. So, Graham says, it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce this abridged version of Forbidden Archaeology. Let me say at the outset that I believe this book to be one of the landmark intellectual achievements of the late 20th century. It will take more conservative scholars a long while, probably many years, to come to terms with the revelations it contains. Nevertheless, Michael Cremo and Richard Thompson have put the revelations out there, and the clock cannot now be turned back. Sooner or later, whether we like it or not, our species is going to have to come to terms with the facts that are so impressively documented in the pages that follow, and these facts are stunning. Cremo and Thompson's central proposition is that the model of human prehistory, carefully built up by scholars over the past 2 centuries, is sadly and completely wrong. Moreover, the authors are not proposing that it can be put right with minor tinkering and adjustments. What is needed is for the existing model to be thrown out the window and for us to start again with open minds and with absolutely no preconceptions at all. This is a position that is close to my own heart. Indeed, it forms the basis of my book, Fingerprints of the Gods. There, however, my focus was exclusively on the past 20,000 years and on the possibility that an advanced global civilization may have flourished more than 12,000 years ago, only to be wiped out and forgotten in the great cataclysm that brought the last ice age to an end. In The Hidden History of the Human Race, Cremo and Thompson go much further, pushing back the horizons of our amnesia not just 12,000 or 20,000 years, but millions of years into the past, and showing that almost everything we have been taught to believe about the origins and evolution of our species rests on the shaky foundation of academic opinion and on a highly selective sampling of research results. The two authors then set about putting the record straight by showing all the other research results that have been edited out of the record during the past 2 centuries, not because there was anything wrong or bogus about the results themselves, but simply because they did not fit with prevailing academic opinion. Anomalous and out-of-place discoveries reported by Cremo and Thompson in The Hidden History of the Human Race include convincing evidence that anatomically modern humans may have been present on the Earth not just for 100,000 years or less, which is the orthodox view. I think that's changed somewhat since he wrote this.
Yeah.
But for millions of years, and that metal objects of advanced design may have been in use at equally early periods. Moreover, although sensational claims have been made before about out-of-place artifacts, they have never been supported by such overwhelming and utterly convincing documentation as Cremo and Thompson provide. In the final analysis, it is the meticulous scholarship of the authors and the cumulative weight of the facts presented in the hidden history of the human race that really convinces. The book is, I believe, in harmony with the mood of the public at large in the world today, a mood which no longer unquestioningly accepts the pronouncements of established authorities and is willing to listen with an open mind to heretics who make their case reasonably and rationally. Never before has the case for a complete re-evaluation of the human story been made more reasonably and rationally than it is in these pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would like to point out, this is probably going to be a theme, definitely in my mind throughout the book, but a lot of the dates that we're talking about are arrived at by uniformitarian geologists.
That's right.
So when we end up saying, well, it pushes back the dates of, the arrival of Homo sapiens sapiens
Yeah.
to millions of years old, well, that's all based on
That's
the
right.
geological, the standard model of geology, and which is uniformitarian, really
Right, and
slow
the
processes.
That's right. And the problems with the dating methods, which is why we did the entire
that's why we
dating.
did the dates.
Yeah.
That would be another good review if you want to jump back and listen to that episode.
Yeah, that's right. Because
That
really
was meant to be right before we started the book.
That's right. Yeah. Because I wanted it to be clear in all of our minds when we started going through this book, because he does mention they use this method to date this thing. And so the purpose of going through all those methods was sort of to give you an idea of what the accuracy of those methods are and how they're usually used, and how scientists are still arguing about how they work. So yeah, it would be a good review to go back through the stellar nucleosynthesis and radiometric dating episode.
Reminds me of the dating at Sacsayhuaman, where it's 250,000 years old. That's irresponsible. Your margin of error is 125,000 years.
That's right. All right, so the preface here says, the unabridged version of Forbidden Archaeology is 952 pages long. It thus presents quite a challenge to many readers. Richard L. Thompson and I therefore decided to bring out the hidden history of the human race, a shorter and more readable and more affordable version of Forbidden Archaeology. The hidden history of the human race does, however, contain almost all of the cases discussed in Forbidden Archaeology. Missing are the bibliographic citations in the text and detailed discussions of the geological and anatomical aspects of many of the cases. For example, in the hidden history of the human race, we might simply state that a site is considered to be late Pliocene in age. In Forbidden Archaeology, we would have given a detailed discussion of why this is so, providing many references to past and present technical geological reports. So that's his explanation there. All right, so introduction now. In 1979, researchers at the Latoli, Tanzania site in East Africa discovered footprints in volcanic ash deposits that are over 3.6 million years old. Mary Lakey and others said the prints were indistinguishable from those of modern humans. To these scientists, this meant only that human ancestors of 3.6 million years ago had remarkably modern feet. But according to other scientists, such as physical anthropologist R.H. Tuttle of the University of Chicago, fossil foot bones of the known Australopithecines
Pithecans.
Pithecans of 3.6 million years ago show that they had feet that were distinctly ape-like. Hence, they were incompatible with the Latoli prints. In an article in the March 1990 issue of Natural History, Tuttle confessed that we are left with somewhat of a mystery. It seems permissible, therefore, to consider a possibility neither Tuttle nor Lakey mentioned, that creatures with anatomically modern human bodies to match their anatomically modern human feet existed some 3.6 million years ago in East Africa. Perhaps, as suggested in the illustration on the opposite page, they coexisted with more ape-like creatures. As intriguing as this archaeological possibility may be, current ideas about human evolution forbid it. But from 1984 to 1992, Richard Thompson and I, with the assistance of our researcher Stephen Bernath, amassed an extensive body of evidence that calls into question current theories of human evolution. Some of this evidence, like the Latoli footprints, is fairly recent, but much of it was reported by scientists in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Without even looking at this older body of evidence, some will assume that there must be something wrong with it, that it was properly disposed of by scientists long ago for very good reasons. Richard and I have looked rather deeply into that possibility, and we have concluded, however, that the quality of this controversial evidence is no better or worse than the supposedly non-controversial evidence usually cited in favor of current views about human evolution. And this is a point that they make a bunch. And so the book is separated into two parts. The first part is anomalous finds, or finds of things, like very credible finds of things that are anomalous according to the standard model. And then the second half of the book is, let's go through all the totally accepted standard model cases and look at how many problems there actually are with how those were found. Right. So
yeah. I just had a thought. We went through the synthesis theory. What was it called?
yeah, that's right. Synthesis.
Yeah.
The hybridization stuff.
theory. How many times could you arrive at the same creature from multiple different ancestors throughout history?
That's a good
That's
point.
a good question. Yep. But there's only one chimpanzee.
That's right. But you have to get that chimpanzee
That's right.
from other creatures.
That's right.
From the hybridization of others. Anyway.
So, in part one, he probably is about to tell you this. In part one of the hidden history of the human race, we look closely at the vast amounts of controversial evidence that contradicts current ideas about human evolution, and we recount in detail how this evidence has been systematically suppressed, ignored, or forgotten, even though it is qualitatively and quantitatively equivalent to the evidence favoring currently accepted views on human origins. When we speak of suppression of evidence, we are not referring to scientific conspirators carrying out a satanic plot to deceive the public. Instead, we are talking about an ongoing social process of knowledge filtration that appears quite innocuous but has a substantial cumulative effect. Certain categories of evidence simply disappear from view, in our opinion, unjustifiably. This pattern of data suppression has been going on for a long time. In 1880, J.D. Whitney, the state geologist of California, published a lengthy review of advanced stone tools found in California gold mines. The implements, including spear points and stone mortars and pestles, were found deep in mine shafts underneath thick, undisturbed layers of lava in formations ranging from 9 million to over 55 million years old. W.H. Holmes of the Smithsonian Institution, one of the most vocal critics of the California finds, wrote, "Perhaps if Professor Whitney had fully appreciated the story of human evolution as it is understood today, he would have hesitated to announce the conclusions formulated." In other words, if the facts do not agree with the favored theory, then such facts, even an imposing array of them, must be discarded.
Well, he was lucky. Galileo and Copernicus, much, much worse.
Yeah, or he could have just vanished into the Smithsonian. This supports the primary point we are trying to make in the hidden history of the human race, namely that there exists in the scientific community a knowledge filter that screens out unwelcome evidence. This process of knowledge filtration has been going on for well over a century and continues to the present day. In addition to the general process of knowledge filtration, there also appear to be cases of more direct suppression. In the early 1950s, Thomas E. Lee of the National Museum of Canada found advanced stone tools in glacial deposits at Shegianda on Manitoulin Island in northern Lake Huron. And geologist John Sanford of Wayne State University argued that the oldest Shegianda tools were at least 65,000 years old and might be as much as 125,000 years old. For those adhering to the standard views on North American prehistory, such ages were unacceptable. Humans supposedly first entered Northern America from Siberia about 12,000 years ago. Thomas E. Lee complained. The site's discoverer was hounded, so he's talking about himself. The site's discoverer, me, was hounded from his civil service position into prolonged unemployment. Publication outliers were cut off. The evidence was misrepresented by several prominent authors. The tons of artifacts vanished into storage bins of the National Museum of Canada. For refusing to fire the discoverer, the director of the National Museum, who had proposed having a monograph on the site published, was himself fired and driven into exile. Official positions of prestige and power were exercised in an effort to gain control over just 6 Shegianda specimens that had not gone undercover, and the site has been turned into a resort. Shegianda would have forced embarrassing admissions that the Brahmins did not know everything, and it would have forced the rewriting of almost every book in the business. It had to be killed, and it was killed.
That reminds me of talking with Jeremy Figgins way back in the beginning about how he was just like, yeah, I wanted to study archaeology, but then I realized archaeologists don't study archaeology.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. In part 2 of the hidden history of the human race, we survey the body of accepted evidence that is generally used to support the now dominant ideas about human evolution. We especially examine the status of Australopithecus. Most anthropologists say Australopithecus was a human ancestor with an ape-like head, a human-like body, and a human-like bipedal stance and gait. But other researchers make a convincing case for a radically different view of Australopithecus. According to these researchers, the Australopithecines were very ape-like, partly tree-dwelling creatures with no direct connection to the human evolutionary lineage. In part 2, we also consider the possible coexistence of primitive hominids and anatomically modern humans, not only in the distant past but in the present. Over the past century, scientists have accumulated evidence suggesting that human-like creatures resembling Gigantopithecus, Australopithecus, Homo erectus, and the Neanderthals are living in various wilderness areas of the world. This would be some Sam Squanch and Yowie sightings and others. In North America, these creatures are known as Sasquatch. In Central Asia, they are called Almas. In Africa, China, Southeast Asia, Central America, and South America, they are known by other names. Some researchers use the general term wild men to include them all. Scientists and physicians have reported seeing live wild men, dead wild men, and footprints. They have also cataloged thousands of reports from ordinary people who have seen these wild men, as well as similar reports from historical records. In 1984, Richard asked his assistant Stephen to begin collecting material on human origins and antiquity. In 1986, Richard asked me to take that material and organize it into a book. As I reviewed the material provided by Stephen, I was struck by the very small number of reports from 1859, when Darwin published The Origin of Species, until 1894, when Dubois published his report on Java Man. Curious about this, I asked Stephen to obtain some anthropology books from the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In these books, including an early edition of Marcellin Boyle's Fossil Men, I found highly negative reviews of numerous reports from the period in question. By tracing out footnotes, we dug up a few samples of these reports. Most of them, by 19th century scientists, described incised bones, stone tools, and anatomically modern skeletal remains encountered in unexpectedly old geological contexts. The reports were of high quality, answering many possible objections. This encouraged me to make a more systematic search. Digging up this buried literary evidence required another 3 years. Stephen and I obtained rare conference volumes and journals from around the world, and together we translated the material into English. Writing the manuscript from the assembled material took another couple of years. Throughout the entire period of research and writing, I had almost daily discussions with Richard about the significance of the material and how best to present it. Stephen obtained much of the material in Chapter 6 from Ron Calais, who kindly sent us many Xeroxes of original reports from his archives. Virginia Steen McIntyre was kind enough to supply us with her correspondence on the dating of the Huatlico, Mexico site. We also had useful discussions about stone tools with Ruth D. Simpson of the San Bernardino County Museum and about shark teeth marks on bone with Thomas A. Demare of the San Diego Natural History Museum. So he's pointing out how much work they did on this, and they contacted a lot of
incredible,
people. Yeah.
Man. Like getting all these manuscripts and translating them.
Yeah.
It's monumental.
That is, yeah. Wow.
Okay.
Very thorough.
Yeah. So, appearance of the hominids. In this book, we take the modern system of geological ages for granted. We use it as a fixed frame of reference for our study of the history of ancient humans and near humans. This is for convenience. We acknowledge that our findings might require serious reconsideration of the geological timescale. So,
there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we have the same thing right now in the studio up on our screen. I found a good, simple geological timescale so that we can reference it because he'll be mentioning them a lot. So he says, according to modern views, the first ape-like beings appeared in the Oligocene period, which began about 38 million years ago. The first apes thought to be on the line to humans appeared in the Miocene, which extends from 5 to 25 million years ago, and these include Dryopithecus. Then came the Pliocene period. During the Pliocene, the first hominids, or erect walking human-like primates, are said to appear in the fossil record. The earliest known hominid is Australopithecus, the southern ape, and is dated back as far as 4 million years in the Pliocene. This near human, say scientists, stood between 4 and 5 feet tall and had a cranial capacity of between 300 and 600 cubic centimeters. From the neck down, Australopithecus is said to have been very similar to modern humans, whereas the head displayed some ape-like and some human features. One branch of Australopithecus is thought to have given rise to Homo habilis about 2 million years ago at the beginning of the Pleistocene period. Homo habilis appears similar to Australopithecus, except that his cranial capacity is said to have been larger, between 6 and 750 cubic centimeters. Homo habilis is thought to have given rise to Homo erectus, the species that includes Java man and Beijing man, around 1.5 million years ago. Homo erectus is said to have stood between 5 and 6 feet tall and had a cranial capacity varying between 700 and 1,300 cubic centimeters. Most paleoanthropologists now believe that from the neck down, Homo erectus was, like Australopithecus and Homo habilis, almost the same as modern humans. The forehead, however, sloped back from behind massive brow ridges, the jaws and teeth were large, and the lower jaw lacked a chin.
So I'm going to just interject really quickly. 300 to 600 cubic centimeters. So you either have a head the size of a normal head or two heads. Like, that's a huge range.
Yeah.
750 to 1,300. That's a huge differentiation between the actual size of the skull. Like, to the point where it would, I mean, it's insane.
I wonder what the range is for, like, modern humans right now. What's the head size range for
I
adult?
honestly don't know, but I can guarantee it's not like a 200% from one end to the other.
Yeah. Yeah, that does seem unlikely.
That's just ridiculous.
He says, it is believed that Homo erectus lived in Africa, Asia, and Europe until about 200,000 years ago. Paleoanthropologists believe that anatomically modern humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, emerged gradually from Homo erectus. Somewhere around 300 to 400,000 years ago, the first early Homo sapiens, or archaic Homo sapiens, are said to have appeared. They are described as having a cranial capacity almost as large as that of modern humans, yet still manifesting to a lesser degree some of the characteristics of Homo erectus, such as the thick skull, receding forehead, and large brow ridges. Examples of this category are the finds from Swanscombe in England, Steinheim in Germany, and Fontagevade.
Somebody else.
And somewhere else in France. Because these skulls also possess, to some degree, Neanderthal characteristics, they are also classified as pre-Neanderthal types. Most authorities now postulate that both anatomically modern humans and the classic Western European Neanderthals evolved from the pre-Neanderthal or early Homo sapiens types of hominids. In the early part of the 20th century, some scientists advocated the view that the Neanderthals of the last glacial period, known as the classic Western European Neanderthals, were the direct ancestors of modern human beings. They had brains larger than those of Homo sapiens sapiens. Their faces and jaws were much larger, and their foreheads were lower, sloping back from behind large brow ridges. Neanderthal remains are found in Pleistocene deposits ranging from 30 to 150,000 years old. However, the discovery of early Homo sapiens in deposits far older than 150,000 years effectively removed the classic Western European Neanderthals from the direct line of descent, leading from Homo erectus to modern humans. I remember this kind of happening, this sort of shift where, Neanderthals were taught as a precursor, like an ancestor, but eventually, as modern humans kept getting pushed back, we found out, no, they were like a brother species or something. Yeah.
So the variation in modern humans, male skulls, you're looking at 124-ish cubic centimeters out of a 1,275, so 10%.
Okay.
And in women, it's about the same. It's 1,213.
So it'll vary
average.
around 100 cubic centimeters, not 2 or 3. Like
Right,
some
which
of
is
those other ones.
10% of the total capacity. So you
Yeah.
have a variation of 10% versus 100.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So, all right.
Thanks,
So
Watcher.
yeah, I mean, could that be? Yeah, I appreciate that. Could that be due to the fact that some of the really old specimens, it's hard to figure out what their
just
age
fragments.
was?
Yeah,
you know
or
what I'm saying?
putting the
Like,
pieces back together, or like since they have this range of they were around for 2 million years, maybe the ones that are oldest have the tiny brains and the newer ones have bigger brains.
well,
I
yeah,
don't
but
know.
I'm just saying is like you're dealing with bone fragments, and if you don't find sutures and things like that, did they? You know, how would they know what the age of the thing was? They could maybe figure out roughly what it's.
I mean, it's a good
You
point.
see what I'm saying?
I'd say it would have to
Was
be
it
the
male or
same,
female? Was it a child? Was it an adult?
Yeah.
the same method they used to put dinosaur skeletons together,
Right.
Yeah.
which has worked
Yeah.
out really well for them.
Paint between the numbers or something like that. That's how they do it, right? And the other thing is like, what is the range for all humans? Not because you were looking at like males, it ranges to this, and like females. Is there a bigger range if you include both?
No, so the averages they were showing was like 1270 something in men, 1213 in women is an average overall capacity.
Okay.
Cubic centimeters, by the way. You know, you got to use units, otherwise they're
Yeah,
just numbers.
cc's.
But the variation, and one of the interesting things is the numbers I was looking at, the variation in women is about 14%, but you also tend to have a greater variation in height
That's true.
among women than you do in men. And since the body stays proportional,
Sometimes.
sometimes.
I mean, I know I've met people with really big heads.
Well, they're more evolved than you, right?
Damn. All right. Let's take a break.
All right.
Snakes have big heads sometimes. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Half our pyramids tied behind our backs just to make it square. And we're doing Hidden History of the Human Race. And yeah, we're still in the intro stuff. So we haven't even gotten to the cases yet, but it's already cool.
Yeah, and my mind keeps going back to the synthesis theory stuff because
Yeah, it is. It is.
the idea that we could be ancestors seems to not matter so much. It's
Right.
you know, or have these ancestors. It's like, yeah, we can live alongside a species that we may have been hybridized with that
Yeah.
and others, and you know.
Yeah.
They
Yep.
can play because with evolution, you're limited in how, you know, that species has to have its own path.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? You can't.
Yeah, and it either keeps going and begins to diverge or
begins-
it ends.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So like with the other way, it's like you could see how well you can kind of merge, you can blur the lines for a while, but the original parent species can remain the same the whole time, but branches that go off in the hybridization.
Yeah, they can anastomose.
That's right. Anastomosing species. Very good.
It brings a really
You
interesting.
get half an attaboy for that.
right.
It brings an interesting element into it also of where, like, when you look into antiquity, you see this incredibly, like, important staying within your own people, right? Like your
Yeah.
own city state or your own whatever. Well, what if the tribes were actually different? Right? Like, you know, you had these different tribes and you didn't crossbreed because then you were a blood trader or something.
Yeah.
But if you had these hybrids that would come from that could then become something better, for example. Like, how
Yeah.
the fuck is a liger 1,200 pounds?
Right. Yeah,
Or
they
what
would
if-
be massive or something.
What if
yeah.
two of the tribes crossing creates your Goliath?
Yeah.
And so, like, you have almost selective breeding and marrying off of the chief's daughter to another tribe because you go, oh, well, that works out. We get Goliaths. Let's do a lot of that.
Let's do a lot of that. Yeah, and that I mean, there is strange. We've talked about this plenty of times on the podcast before. The breeding ideas that older civilizations had. You know, the thing with where the proper wife was the daughter of the same father but a different mother or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they had these. And you find out that that's the same breeding practices that modern people use today to do cattle or something.
Yeah,
And
it's
like,
weird.
okay, what's going on here? Yeah. Yep. All right.
Do it for science.
Yep. Do it for science. The type of human known as Cro-Magnon appeared in Europe approximately 30,000 years ago, and they were anatomically modern. Scientists used to say that anatomically modern Homo sapiens first appeared around 40,000 years ago, but now many authorities, in light of discoveries in South Africa and elsewhere, say that they appeared 100 or more thousand years ago. The cranial capacity of modern humans varies from 1,000 to 2,000 C. So he gives it.
Dude, what?
That's what
I
he
mean,
says.
maybe if we're talking like a 4'8" woman and a 7'5" man.
Yeah. The average being around 1350. Does he get that right?
No, that's about right.
Okay. As can be readily observed today among modern humans, there is no correlation between brain size and intelligence. There are highly intelligent people with 1,000 cc brains and morons with 2,000 cc brains. Exactly where or when or how Australopithecus gave rise to Homo habilis, or Homo habilis gave rise to Homo erectus, or Homo erectus gave rise to modern humans is not explained in present accounts of human origins. However, most paleoanthropologists agree that only anatomically modern humans came to the New World. The earlier stages of evolution from Australopithecus on up are all said to have taken place in the Old World. The first arrival of human beings in the New World is generally said to have occurred some 12,000 years ago, with some scientists willing to grant a late Pleistocene date of 25,000 years. Even today, there are gaps, many gaps, in the presumed record of human descent. For example, there is an almost total absence of fossils linking the Miocene apes, such as Dryopithecus, with the Pliocene ancestors of modern apes and humans, especially within the span of time between 4 and 8 million years ago. Perhaps it is true that fossils will someday be found that fill these gaps. Yet, and this is extremely important, there is no reason to suppose that the fossils that turn up will be supportive of evolutionary theory. What if, for example, fossils of anatomically modern humans turned up in strata older than those in which Dryopithecus were found? Even if anatomically modern humans were found to have lived 1 million years ago, 4 million years after the late Miocene disappearance of Dryopithecus, that would be enough to throw out the current accounts of the origins of humankind. In fact, such evidence has already been found, but it has since been suppressed or conveniently forgotten. Much of it came to light in the decades immediately after Darwin published The Origin of Species, before which there had been no notable finds except Neanderthal man. In the first years of Darwinism, there was no clearly established story of human descent to be defended, and professional scientists made and reported many discoveries that now would never make it into the pages of any journal more academically respectable than the National Enquirer.
Wow. I just realized, too, that the synthesis theory is Darwinian evolution.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
The other one is just the hybridization theory, right?
That's right, yeah.
So I've been saying that
Okay.
wrong.
You're right. He calls it synthesis theory, which
Yeah.
is the modern concept of, it's like
Right.
neo-Darwinism.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of these fossils and artifacts were unearthed before the discovery by Eugene Dubois of Java Man, the first Eugene, the first proto-human hominid between Dryopithecus and modern humans. Java Man was found in Middle Pleistocene deposits, generally given an age of 800,000 years. The discovery became a benchmark. Henceforth, scientists would not expect to find fossils or artifacts of anatomically modern humans in deposits of equal or greater age. If they did, they, or someone wiser, concluded that this was impossible and found some way to discredit the find as a mistake, an illusion, or a hoax. Before Java Man, however, reputable 19th century scientists found a number of examples of anatomically modern human skeletal remains in very ancient strata. And they also found large numbers of stone tools of various types, as well as animal bones bearing signs of human action. All right, some principles of epistemology. Before beginning our survey of rejected and accepted paleoanthropological evidence, we shall outline a few epistemological rules that we have tried to follow. Epistemology is defined in Webster's New World Dictionary as the study or theory of the origin, nature, methods, and limits of knowledge. When engaged in the study of scientific evidence, it is important to keep the nature, methods, and limits of knowledge in mind, otherwise one is prone to fall to illusion. Paleoanthropological evidence has certain key limitations that should be pointed out. First, the observations that go into paleoanthropological facts tend to involve rare discoveries that cannot be duplicated at will. For example, some scientists in this field have built great reputations on the basis of a few famous discoveries, and others, the vast majority, have spent their whole careers without making a single significant find. Second, once a discovery is made, key elements of the evidence are destroyed, and knowledge of these elements depends solely on the testimony of the discoverers. For example, one of the most important aspects of a fossil is its stratigraphic position. However, once the fossil is removed from the earth, the direct evidence indicating its position is destroyed, and we simply have to depend on the excavator's testimony as to where he or she found it. Of course, one may argue that chemical or other features of the fossil may indicate its place of origin, and this is true in some cases, but not in others. And in making such judgments, we also have to depend on the reports concerning the chemical and other physical properties of the strata in which the fossil was allegedly found. Persons making important discoveries sometimes cannot find their way back to the sites of those discoveries. After a few years, the sites are almost inevitably destroyed, perhaps by erosion, by complete paleoanthropological excavation, or by commercial developments involving quarrying, building, construction, and so forth. Even modern excavations involving meticulous recording of details destroy the very evidence they are recording, leaving one with nothing but written testimony to back up many key assertions. And many important discoveries, even today, involve very scanty recording of key details. Thus, a person desiring to verify paleoanthropological reports will find it very difficult to gain access to the real facts, even if he or she is able to travel to the site. And, of course, limitations of time and money make it impossible to personally examine more than a small percentage of the total of important paleoanthropological sites. A third problem is that the facts of paleoanthropology are seldom, if ever, simple. A scientist may testify that the fossils were clearly weathering out of an early Pleistocene layer, but this apparently simple statement may depend on many observations and arguments involving geological faulting, the possibility of slumping, the presence or absence of a layer of hill wash, the presence of a refilled gully, and so on. If one consults the testimony of another person present at the site, one may find that he or she discusses many important details not mentioned by the first witness. Different observers sometimes contradict one another, and their senses and memories are imperfect. Thus, an observer at a given site may see certain things but miss other important things. Some of these things might be seen by other observers, but this could turn out to be impossible because the site has become inaccessible. Then there is the problem of cheating. This can occur on the level of systematic fraud, such as in the Piltdown case. As we shall see, to get to the bottom of this kind of cheating, one requires the investigative abilities of a super Sherlock Holmes plus all the facilities of a modern forensic laboratory. Unfortunately, there are always strong motives for deliberate or unconscious fraud, since fame and glory await the person who succeeds in finding a human ancestor. Cheating can also occur on the level of simply omitting to report observations that do not agree with one's desired conclusions. As we will see in the course of this book, investigators have sometimes observed artifacts in certain strata, but never reported this because they did not believe the artifacts could possibly be of that age. It is very difficult to avoid this because our senses are imperfect, and if we see something that seems impossible, then it is natural to suppose that we might be mistaken. Indeed, this may very well be the case. Cheating by neglecting to mention important observations is simply a limitation of human nature that, unfortunately, can have a deleterious impact on the empirical process. The drawbacks of paleoanthropological facts are not limited to excavations of objects. Similar drawbacks are found in modern chemical or radiometric dating studies. For example, a carbon-14 date might seem to involve a straightforward procedure that reliably yields a number, the age of an object. But actual dating studies often turn out to involve complex considerations regarding the identity of samples and their history and possible contamination. They may involve the rejection of some preliminary calculated dates and the acceptance of others on the basis of complex arguments that are seldom explicitly published. Here also the facts can be complex, incomplete, and largely inaccessible. The conclusion we draw from these limitations of paleoanthropological facts is that in this field of study we are largely limited to the comparative study of reports. Although hard evidence does exist in the form of fossils and artifacts in museums, most of the key evidence that gives importance to these objects exists only in written form. Since the information conveyed by paleoanthropological reports tends to be incomplete, and since even the simplest facts tend to involve complex, unresolvable issues, it is difficult to arrive at solid conclusions about reality in this field. So what then can we do? We suggest that one important thing we can do is compare the quality of different reports. Although we do not have access to the real facts, we can directly study different reports and objectively compare them. A collection of reports dealing with certain discoveries can be evaluated on the basis of the thoroughness of the reported investigation and the logic and consistency of the arguments presented. One can consider whether it or not various skeptical counterarguments to a given theory have been raised and answered. Since reported observations must always be taken on faith in some respect, one can also inquire into the qualifications of the observers. We propose that if two collections of reports appear to be equally reliable on the basis of these criteria, then they should be treated equally. Both sets might be accepted, both might be rejected, or both might be regarded as having an uncertain status. It would be wrong, however, to accept one set of reports while rejecting the other, and it would be especially wrong to accept one set as proof of a given theory while suppressing the other set, and thus rendering it inaccessible to future students. We apply this approach to two particular sets of reports. The first set consists of reports of anomalously old artifacts and human skeletal remains, most of which were discovered in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These reports are discussed in Part 1. The second set consists of reports of artifacts and skeletal remains that are accepted as evidence in support of current theories of human evolution. These reports range in date from the late 19th century to the 1980s, and they are discussed in Part 2. Due to the natural interconnections between different discoveries, some anomalous discoveries are also discussed in Part 2. Our thesis is that in spite of the various advances in paleoanthropological science in the 20th century, there is an essential equivalence in quality between these two sets of reports. We therefore suggest that it is not appropriate to accept one set and reject the other. This has serious implications for the modern theory of human evolution. If we reject the first set of reports, the anomalies, and to be consistent, also reject the second set, evidence currently accepted, then the theory of human evolution is deprived of a good part of its observational foundation. But if we accept the first set of reports, then we must accept the existence of intelligent, tool-making beings in geological periods as remote as the Miocene or even the Eocene. If we accept the skeletal evidence presented in these reports, we must go further and accept the existence of anatomically modern human beings in these remote periods. This not only contradicts the modern theory of human evolution, but also casts grave doubt on our whole picture of the evolution of mammalian life in the Cenozoic era.
That's awesome. It's epistemology?
Epistemology. The study of the limits of knowledge.
Gotta engrave that into my brain with a laser. I love like, I don't know, the author going into this whole like exterior, seemingly unrelated aspect of study just to use it to analyze the science.
Like, how do we look at these reports? Yeah.
That's so cool. It is.
And I appreciate it because he's right. Like, this is not an easy field. You're finding tiny fragments of things. Most of them, like, we've had these conversations about how do fossils even get formed. They are formed in rare events, right? So you're looking at rare pieces of things formed in rare events, and then they're ancient. And then you have to find them. You know, a lot of times they're buried. You know, some miner is digging and he comes across it. Like, that's just, you know, you can't. It's non-repeatable. So it's not like you can bring it into the lab and test things out and make a hypothesis and try to repeat the experiment. You can't do that. You have to just keep looking for stuff. And he's right. Some people have made their entire career based on one bone, you know, like whatever. So, and then we've done this too. We go to some geological site. I notice a bunch of stuff. You notice a bunch of totally different stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
If
Like,
we were writing reports on it, it would be.
You remember that time that Kyle and I found all those little fish? You guys can't know that.
Yeah.
No, they're totally fish. Look.
Yeah, they look like fish. I mean, maybe, but you don't know they're fish. Okay. So this whole first section where I've marked up here of the finds, I found this really interesting. It's all about, nothing human, right? Not even tools. We get into the tools later, but the whole first part is about animal bones with weird marks on them.
Yeah.
Okay. And these are considered to be, I mean, like, what's the one that's in the museum here?
Yeah, it's like a femur bone of
it's
mammoth.
Right. And it's got butchering marks on it. Right. So that's what this whole first section is. And it's like, it seems like it should be boring, but it's totally not to me anyway. I don't know. It's like, okay, they just have some scratches on there, and they have these huge, massive conventions, and everybody's bickering at each other over a couple of scratches on a bone.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's so cool when you get into the details. It's like how they, the arguments that are made based on that.
One possible explanation would be if the bones were, I don't know, say pushed down into a cavern of some sort that was like a blender.
Has anyone mentioned a blender cavern?
Has anyone mentioned a blender yet? Okay, so incised and broken bones, the dawn of deception. Intentionally cut and broken bones of animals comprise a substantial part of the evidence for human antiquity. These came under serious study in the middle of the 19th century and have remained the object of extensive research and analysis up to the present. In the decades following the publication of Darwin's The Origin of Species, many scientists found incised and broken bones indicating a human presence in the Pliocene, Miocene, and earlier periods. Opponents suggested that the marks and breaks observed on these fossil bones were caused by the actions of carnivores, sharks, or geological pressure. But supporters of the discoveries offered impressive counterarguments. For example, stone tools were sometimes found along with the incised bones, and experiments with these implements produced marks on fresh bone exactly resembling those on the fossils. Scientists also employed microscopes in order to distinguish the cuts on fossil bones from those that might be made by animal or shark teeth. In many instances, the marks were located in places on the bone appropriate for specific butchering operations. Nonetheless, reports of incised and broken bones indicating a human presence in the Pliocene and earlier are absent from the currently accepted stock of evidence. This exclusion may not, however, be warranted. From the incomplete evidence now under active consideration, scientists have concluded that humans of the modern type appeared fairly recently, but in light of the evidence covered in this chapter, it appears they may be deceiving themselves. So, first place, Saint-Prest in France. In April of 1863, Jules Denoyer of the French National Museum came to Saint-Prest in northwestern France to gather fossils. From the sandy gravels, he recovered a part of a rhinoceros tibia. He noticed on the bone a series of narrow grooves. To Denoyer, some of the grooves appeared to have been produced by a sharp knife or blade of flint. He also observed small circular marks that could well have been made by a pointed implement. Later, Denoyer examined the collections of Saint-Prest fossils at the museums of Chartres and the School of Mines in Paris and saw that they bore the same types of marks. He then reported his findings to the French Academy of Sciences. Some modern scientists have said that the St. Prest site belongs to the late Pliocene. If Denier concluded correctly that the marks on many of the bones had been made by flint implements, then it would appear that human beings had been present in France at that time. One might ask, so what's wrong with that? In terms of our modern understanding of paleoanthropology, quite a bit is wrong. The presence at that time in Europe of beings using stone tools in a sophisticated manner would seem almost impossible. It is believed that at the end of the Pliocene, about 2 million years ago, the modern human species had not yet come into being. Only in Africa should one find primitive human ancestors, and these were limited to Australopithecus and Homo habilis, the latter considered the first toolmaker. According to reports by other scientists, the St. Prest site might be more recent than the Pliocene, perhaps as little as 1.2 to 1.6 million years old, but the incised bones would still be anomalous. Even in the 19th century, Denier's discovery of incised bones at St. Prest provoked controversy. Opponents argued that the marks were made by the tools of the workmen who excavated them. But Denier showed that the cut marks were covered with mineral deposits just like the other surface of the fossil bones. The prominent British geologist Sir Charles Lyell suggested the marks were made by rodents' teeth.
Rock mice?
But French prehistorian Gabriel Demortier said that the marks could not have been made by animals. He instead suggested that they were made by sharp stones moved by geological pressure across the bones. To this, Denier replied, "Many of the incisions have been worn by later rubbing, resulting from transport or movement of the bones in the midst of the sands and gravels. The resulting markings are of an essentially different character than the original marks and striations." So who was right, Denier or Demortier? Some authorities believe the question could be settled if it could be shown that the gravels of St. Prest contained flint tools that were definitely of human manufacture. Louis Bourgeois, a clergyman who had also earned a reputation as a distinguished paleontologist, carefully searched the strata at St. Prest for such evidence. By his patient research, he eventually found a number of flints that he believed were genuine tools and made them the subject of a report to the Academy of Sciences in January of 1861. The famous French anthropologist Armand de Quatrefages said the tools included scrapers, borers, and lance points. And I think these would be really primitive ones.
Yeah.
Probably unifacials.
Yeah.
Even this did not satisfy Demortier, who said that the flints discovered by Bourgeois at St. Prest had been chipped by geological pressure.
Oh, man.
It appears that in our attempt to answer one question, the nature of cut marks on bones, we have stumbled upon another, the question of how to recognize human workmanship on flints and other stone objects. This latter question shall be fully treated in the next chapter. For now, we shall simply note that judgments about what constitutes a stone tool are a matter of considerable controversy even to this day. It is, therefore, quite definitely possible to find reasons to question Demortier's rejection of the flints found by Bourgeois. In 1910, the famous American paleontologist Henry Fairfield Osborn made these interesting remarks in connection with this presence of stone tools at St. Prest. The earliest traces of man in beds of this age were the incised bones discovered by Denier at St. Prest near Chartres in 1863. Doubt as to the artificial character of these incisions has been removed by the recent explorations of Leville and Routeau, which resulted in the discovery of Eolithic Flints. Yeah, so eoliths are the most primitive kind. And these fully confirming the discoveries of the Abbé Bourgeois in these deposits in 1867. So, as far as the discoveries at St. Prest are concerned, it should now be apparent that we are dealing with paleontological problems that cannot be quickly or easily resolved. Certainly, there is not sufficient reason to categorically reject these bones as evidence for a human presence in the Pliocene. This might lead one to wonder why the St. Prest fossils... Rookie move. I hate to see it happen.
So sad.
This might lead one to wonder why the St. Prest fossils and others like them are almost never mentioned in textbooks on human evolution, except in rare cases of brief mocking footnotes of dismissal. Is it really because the evidence is clearly inadmissible, or is perhaps the omission or summary rejection more related to the fact that the potential late Pliocene antiquity of the objects is so much at odds with the standard account of human origins? Along these lines, Armand de Quatrefages, a member of the French Academy of Sciences and professor at the Museum of Natural History in Paris, wrote in his book, that I am not even going to try to pronounce, the objections made to the existence of humans in the Pliocene and Miocene periods seem to habitually be more related to theoretical considerations than direct observation.
It's a very diplomatic way of saying it.
Yes. So, did you guys get the gist of that story? Like, he finds the bones, and then there's a couple of skirps, and the main one, de Mortier, who's going to appear a bunch. He's a huge skirp and on some of this stuff. He says the marks were made by geological forces. Like, the sands and gravels are moving around, and the bones are moving around, and you end up with these striated lines. Yeah. And then, of course, the guy comes back and he's like, no, look, like, we see what those marks look like, and they are on these bones, but number one, they're not as old as these were made when the bone was fresh, and so on and so forth.
Right.
One direction.
So then they were like, well, we could figure this out if we could find out if there are, like, tools in these same deposits. So this other guy, the Abbey guy, goes out and he finds tools, and the same de Mortier guy says those tools were also chipped by geological pressure.
Yeah, yeah.
Did anybody ask him, who is he who is so wise in the ways of science? Earth made the tools also.
Yeah. But it's interesting because that case sets up the arguments that we're going to see throughout this chapter. Because what it comes down to, and in some cases, it's like they do point out, they're like, look, here are like Olduvai Gorge or other finds that are totally accepted, and they're like incredibly crude, and it would be tough for. I mean, I've looked at some of them. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'd recognize that as a tool.
Yeah.
Right. And like we've hunted arrowheads. I know how to find arrowheads, but
yeah, I was gonna say that in some of my old arrowhead books, like when there was one that I had that had tools going way back. You know,
Eoliths
like
are what they call them.
Tens of thousands of years and further.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, I must have walked past like thousands of these, and I would never it's like it's really hard to recognize them. So I probably should look more into like how to recognize them. But this is one of the reasons why when people like pick up a rock on the ground, and they're like, dude, look at this rock, like it fits my hand and it's, it's got this sharp edge or whatever. And I don't notice any, what I would recognize as like, tool marks.
Right. Workmanship on it.
I'm kind of just like, well,
could be.
It could be. I don't know. It just,
Yeah.
It's hard to just declare like, nope. It's not an artifact.
Right. And they have a name for, I'm trying to remember what it's called, but it's a form of eolith, which is what they call the very oldest tools, eoliths, where it's basically just a found thing, where it's like, it's a piece of rock that just happens to fit the hand right, and it's got an edge, and they just use it as is without ever modifying it.
Right. And that's the other thing is like, it could have been used. I don't see any human work on it.
Right. Yeah.
So I had another question. Who the hell is eating rhinoceros?
I mean, if you're hungry enough.
And when were there rhinos in France? Like,
Well, we're talking about 1.2
all right, fair enough. But I mean,
million. That's.
I guess if it's all you have around, but that's some pretty thick plating. Like, you're going to have to really do some damage to a rhino.
Yeah. Yeah.
The struggle was real.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, maybe they were slower than deer and it was easier. I don't know. But yeah, I have no idea. That's a good question.
Wile E. Coyote it, push a boulder off a mountain and just rhino.
Yeah. Yep. And there are some of that.
Geological process.
It was, yes. It was a geological process that killed this rhino. And yeah, there are other ones where they found traps, Look, well, they call it a trap. I don't know, but it was a pit where the walls were clearly had been chiseled out, and in the bottom of it was filled with bones of slaughtered animals, and they assumed it was a trap, right? Well, I don't know, because I started thinking of blenders, and I started thinking, I'm serious. I was like, wait a minute.
I know you're serious.
I was thinking of Velikovsky. I'm like, is this just one of those?
Yeah, that's definitely something that I've been considering too, but like reading about these mammoth kill sites and stuff,
Yeah.
Where they just keep finding more and more mammoth bones. And
Yeah, you're like, this was a Velikovsky blender.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break. I would eat a rhinoceros.
I mean, could be good.
In the cube, fastest 2 hours in podcasting, as we return for the final segment.
That's right.
Already.
Kind of hard to believe.
Yeah. It's like, no, this is the third one. Nope. So anyway,
we're gonna go to a second beer. We're gonna go to a modern example. He says, in Old Crow River in Canada. So before moving on to further examples of 19th century discoveries that challenge modern ideas about human origins, let us consider a more recent investigation of intentionally modified bones. One of the most controversial questions confronting New World paleoanthropology is determining the time at which humans entered North America. The standard view is that bands of Asian hunter-gatherers crossed over the Bering Land Bridge about 12,000 years ago. Some authorities are willing to extend the date to about 30,000 years ago, while an increasing minority are reporting evidence for a human presence in the Americas at far earlier dates in the Pleistocene. We shall examine this question in greater detail in coming chapters. For now, however, we only want to consider the fossil bones uncovered at Old Crow River in the northern Yukon Territory as a contemporary example of the type of evidence dealt with in this chapter. In the 1970s, Richard E. Moreland of the Archaeological Survey of Canada and the Canadian National Museum of Man conducted studies of modified bones from the Old Crow River sites. Moreland concluded that many bones and antlers exhibited signs of intentional human work, executed before the bones had become fossilized. The bones, which had undergone river transport, were recovered from an early Wisconsin glacial floodplain dated at 80,000 years before present. This greatly challenged the current ideas about the peopling of the New World. But in 1984, R. M. Thorson and R. D. Guthrie published a study showing that the action of river ice could have caused the alterations that suggested human work to Moreland. Afterwards, Moreland backed away from his assertions that all the bones he had collected had been modified by human agency. He admitted 30 out of 34 could have been marked by river ice or other natural causes. Even so, he still believed the other 4 specimens bore definite signs of human work. In a published report, he said, "The cuts and scrapes are indistinguishable from those made by stone tools during butchering and defleshing of an animal carcass." Moreland sent 2 of the bones to Dr. Pat Shipman of Johns Hopkins University, an expert on cut bones. Shipman examined the marks on the bones under an electron scanning microscope and compared them with more than 1,000 documented marks on bone. And Shipman said the marks on one of the bones was inconclusive, but in her opinion, the other bone had a definite tool mark on it.
That guy might have had a hard time getting a date. So what do? I study cut bones.
Yeah.
The world's leading expert.
It was a woman. But yeah.
Whoops. It would have been easy to get a date there.
Yeah, probably. Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm totally into cut bones.
Little stereotypical humor right there.
Moreland noted that stone implements had been found in the Old Crow River area and in nearby uplands, but not in direct association with the bones. What all this means is that the bones of St. Prest and others like them cannot be easily dismissed. Evidence of the same type is still considered important today, and the methods of analysis are almost identical to those practiced in the 19th century. Scientists of those days may not have had electron microscopes, but optical microscopes were and still are good enough for this kind of work. Okay. A desert in California. You know how to say that one? Anza Borrego? Is that right? Do you know?
Yeah.
You ever heard of this?
No.
Californian guy?
No.
Okay. Anza Borrego Desert, California. Another recent example of incised bones like those found at St. Prest is a discovery made by George Miller, curator of the Imperial Valley College Museum in El Centro, California. Miller, who died in 1989, reported that 6 mammoth bones excavated from the Anza Borrego Desert bear scratches of the kind produced by stone tools. Uranium isotope dating, carried out by the U.S. Geological Survey, indicated the bones are at least 300,000 years old. And paleomagnetic dating and volcanic ash samples indicated an age of some 750,000 years. So there's a huge difference in those two dates. So they've got one that would be based on volcanic ash and paleomagnetic pulses. And then the other one is a uranium isotope. He doesn't say which one, but a uranium isotope date.
I mean, those are irresponsible. The margin of error is way too big.
Yeah, they're pretty big. One established scholar said that Miller's claim is as reasonable as the Loch Ness Monster or a living mammoth in Siberia. While Miller countered that these people don't want to see man here because their careers would go down the drain.
Devastating to my paycheck.
The incised mammoth bones came from the Anza Borrego Desert, came up in a conversation we had with Thomas Desmarais, a paleontologist at the San Diego National History Museum. Desmarais said that he was by nature skeptical of claims such as those made by Miller. He called into question the professionalism with which the bones had been excavated and pointed out that no stone tools had been found along with the fossils. Furthermore, Desmarais suggested that it was very unlikely that anything about the find would ever be published in a scientific journal because the referees who review articles probably would not pass it. And we later learned from Julie Parks, the curator of George Miller's specimens, that Desmarais has never inspected the fossils or visited the site of the discovery, although he had been invited to do so.
Yeah.
I don't need to do that. I already know it's fake.
Right. Parks said that one incision apparently continues from one of the fossil bones to another bone that would have been located next to it when the mammoth skeleton was intact. This is suggestive of a butchering mark. Accidental marks resulting from the movement of the bones in the earth after the skeleton had broken up probably would not continue from one bone to another in this fashion. I think that's interesting. So the butchering mark goes from, one bone to another, and those bones would have been next to each other when the mammoth was intact. So,
right.
And it's clearly the same mark going across them.
Not a geological process.
Right, yeah. More rhinoceroses. Brett. Rhinoceros of Billy, France.
It must be tasty.
Yeah, they must be. On April 13th, 1868, somebody informed the French Academy of Sciences that P. Bertrand had sent him 2 fragments of a lower jaw of a rhinoceros. These were from a pit near Billy in France. I'm probably saying that wrong too. One of the fragments had 4 very deep grooves on it. These short grooves, situated on the lower part of the bone, were approximately parallel. According to this person, the cut marks appeared in cross-section, like those made by a hatchet on a piece of wood. And so he thought the marks had been made in the same way, that is, with a hand-held stone chopping instrument, when the bone was fresh. And that I guess I need to learn to say this guy's name. Lausidae, maybe?
Well, you just put like owl.
Just throw a random.
It's either owl or owl backwards.
Lausidae is what it looks like to me. I don't know. That indicated to Lausidae that humans had been contemporary with the fossil rhino in a geologically remote time. Just how remote is shown by the fact that the jawbone was found in a middle Miocene formation, which is about 15 million years old. A highly regarded modern authority on cut bones is Louis R. Binford, an anthropologist from the University of New Mexico at Albuquerque. In his book, Bones, Ancient Men, and Modern Myths, Binford said, marks from stone tools tend to be short, occurring in groups of parallel marks. And the marks described by Lausadae confirmed to this description. So it looks like somebody was chopping at it. So there's like 4 parallel lines in the bone. The April 1868 proceedings of the French Academy of Sciences contained this report by F. Garrigot and H. Philhole. Philhole, the archaeologist. We now have sufficient evidence to permit us to suppose that the contemporaneity of human beings and Miocene mammals is demonstrated. This evidence was a collection of mammalian bones, apparently intentionally broken, from Sanson in France. Especially noteworthy were broken bones of the small deer Duroceras elegans. Modern scientists consider the bone beds of Sanson to be Middle Miocene, and one may consider the devastating effect that the presence of human beings about 15 million years ago would have on current evolutionary doctrines. De Mortier, in his usual fashion, said that some of the Sanson bones were broken by natural forces at the time of fossilization, perhaps by desiccation, and others afterwards by movement of the strata. Garrigot, however, maintained his conviction that the bones of Sanson had been broken by humans in the course of extracting marrow. He made his case in 1871 at the meeting of the International Congress of Prehistoric Anthropology and Archaeology. Garrigot first presented to the Congress a series of recent bones with undisputed marks of butchering and breaking. So he brings out, like, here's bones that have just been butchered. Recent bones. For comparison, he then presented bones of the small deer collected from Sanson, and the markings on these bones matched the modern ones. Garrigot also showed that many of the bone fragments had very fine scrape marks, such as found on broken marrow bones of the late Pleistocene. According to Binford, the first step in processing marrow bones is to remove the layer of tissue from the bone surface by scraping with a stone tool. So I guess when they're extracting marrow, they scrape the bones themselves to get that. What is that? Do you know you remember that what that tissue's called that's encases the bones?
Like the fascia or the
I don't know. Is that it? I'm asking you what it's called.
Are you talking like layers of bones or just the sinew and everything?
Yeah, the sinew on the outside.
It's like a clear skin that's on the bone, like a.
Yeah, it's fascia.
Okay, yeah, that's it. At a place called Pykermi, near the plain of Marathon in Greece, there is a fossil-rich stratum of late Miocene age explored and described by the prominent French scientist Albert Gaudry. During the meeting in 1872 at Brussels of the International Congress of Prehistoric Anthropology and Archaeology, Baron von Ducker reported that broken bones from Pykermi proved the existence of humans in the Miocene. Modern authorities still place the Pykermi site in the late Miocene, which would make the bones at least 5 million years old. Von Ducker first examined numerous bones from the Pykermi site in the Museum of Athens. He found 34 jaw parts of Hipparion, which is an extinct three-toed horse, and antelope, as well as 19 fragments of tibia and 22 other fragments of bones from large mammals such as rhinoceros. All showed traces of methodical fracturing for the purpose of extracting marrow. According to von Ducker, they all bore more or less distinct traces of blows from hard objects, and he also noted many hundreds of bone flakes broken in the same manner.
So it is fascia, specifically periosteum.
Ah, periosteum. That was the word I was looking for. Words. Word?
One word.
In addition, von Ducker observed many dozens of crania of Hipparion and antelope showing methodical removal of the upper jaw in order to extract the brain. The edges of the fractures were very sharp, which may generally be taken as a sign of human breakage rather than breakage by gnawing carnivores or geological pressures. So they were extracting the brain, too.
can often be used in the tanning of hides.
Tanning, yeah.
It's pretty advanced. Just saying.
Yep, it is.
Yeah. Von Ducker then journeyed to the Pikermi site himself to continue his investigation. During the course of his first excavation, he found dozens of bone fragments of Hipparion and antelope and reported that about 1/4 of them bore signs of intentional breakage. In this regard, one may keep in mind Binford's finding that in assemblages of bones broken in the course of human marrow extraction, about 14 to 17% have signs of impact notches. I also found, stated von Ducker, among the bones, a stone of a size that could readily be held in the hand. It is pointed on one side and is perfectly adapted to making the kinds of marks observed on these bones.
Awesome. I'd like to see pictures of that.
Yeah. Now, pierced shark teeth. I found this was interesting to me. From the Red Crag in England. At a meeting of the Royal Anthropological Institute of Great Britain and Ireland held on April 8th, 1872, Edward Charlesworth, a fellow of the Geological Society, showed many specimens of shark teeth. The shark is called Carcharodon, I think, each with a hole bored through the center, as is done by South Seas Islanders for the purpose of making weapons and necklaces. The teeth were recovered from eastern England's Red Crag Formation, indicating an age of approximately 2 to 2.5 million years old.
Wow.
Charlesworth gave convincing arguments why marine animals such as boring mollusks, meaning mollusks that drill holes, not that are very boring, right? They drill holes. Boring mollusks could not have made these holes. During the discussion, one scientist suggested that tooth decay could be the cause, but sharks are not known to have this problem. Lucky guys. Another suggested parasites, but admitted that no parasites are known to reside in the teeth of fish. At that point, Dr. Coyer gave his opinion in favor of human action. The record of the meeting stated, he had carefully examined by aid of a powerful magnifying glass the perforated shark's teeth. The perforations to his mind were the work of man. Among his reasons were the beveled conditions of the edges of the perforations, the central position of the holes in the teeth, and the marks of artificial means employed in making the borings. I mean, that's 2 million years. That's...
Yeah, but, I mean...
Again, the dating could be weird.
Well,
yeah.
Not only that, but we still find ridiculously old shark teeth on the beach.
Yeah.
You know, you find fossil shark teeth on the beach in many places.
Yeah. Oh, you're suggesting they may have drilled...
Yeah, they could have found them already fossilized and extremely ancient and drilled them.
Yeah, so...
But I don't know what I don't know where they found them.
The conditions of the find. Yeah, so they were recovered from the Red Crag Formation. I'm
like, if they were encased in stone, that's a totally different.
Yeah,
you know, that's
they're
totally
encased
different.
in material. Yeah,
right. They were excavating them from some site, and then they would have gotten the dating from geological processes.
Yeah,
but still, if they were just dating the shark teeth somehow,
right,
they could have come up with really old dates.
the date of 2 million to 2.5 million years is based on the formation they were found in.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. So, like, ancient people could have found fossil shark teeth and then tried to drill hole. That would be
right.
hard.
In the same way you would find a stone that's ridiculously old and then try to modify it for a weapon.
Right. Yeah.
You don't date the stone. You got to date the work.
Right. But I also got the idea, I guess it doesn't say this specifically, but marks of artificial means employed in making the borings, beveled conditions of the edges of the perforations. Like, it's interesting, like they were beveled.
Yeah, because you wouldn't want a sharp edge.
Yeah.
You know, on where the hole is.
Yeah.
Especially if you were
It's good work is the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's brilliant. Man. You're going to find some shark teeth and make some weapons.
Yeah.
They make great weapons.
Yeah, good stabby things.
Yeah. And then they're like, I was just thinking, like, okay, so you find some bones, and they've got these marks on them, and then you've got this scriptard who's like, those were made by shark teeth. And then you find shark teeth.
And they've got marks on them.
Make sure they're made into weapons or tools.
And you're like,
it's like, yeah,
yeah,
okay.
buddy. They probably were made by shark's teeth. Shark teeth spears. Okay, carved bone from the Dardanelles in Turkey. In 1874, Frank Calvert found in a Miocene formation in Turkey a Dinotherium bone with carved figures of animals upon it. Calvert noted, I have found in different parts of the same cliff, not far from the site of the engraved bone, a flint flake and some bones of animals fractured longitudinally, obviously by the hand of man for the purpose of extracting the marrow, according to the practice of all primitive races. Some of these quotes from these guys are just like, God, you'd never get away with that now. Yeah. The elephant-like Dinotherium is said by modern authorities to have existed from the late Pliocene to the early Miocene in Europe. It is thus quite possible that Calvert's dating of the Dardanelle site as Miocene was correct. The Miocene is now said to extend from 5 to 25 million years before the present. According to the current dominant view, only exceedingly ape-like hominids are supposed to have existed during that period. Even a late Pliocene date of 2 to 3 million years for the Dardanelles site would be far too early for the kind of artifacts found there. Carvings of the kind found in the Dinotherium bone are said to be the work of anatomically modern humans of the last 40,000 years. So yeah, pushing it back to 2 to 3 million or even 25 million years before present. In Le Préhistorie, Desmortier did not dispute the age of the formation. Instead, he commented that the simultaneous presence of a carved bone, intentionally broken bones, and a flint flake tool was just too perfect. So perfect as to raise doubts about the find.
Oh my God. Seriously?
That's what he says.
It makes way too much sense, your conclusion, so what you're concluding must be nonsense.
Yeah.
This is quite remarkable. In the case of the incised bones of St. Prest, Desmortier complained that no stone tools or other signs of a human presence were found. Here, with the requisite items discovered along with the bone, Desmortier says the ensemble was too perfect, hinting at cheating.
Yeah.
But David A. Trail, a professor of classics at the University of California at Davis, gives this information about him. Calvert was the most distinguished of a family of British expatriates that was prominent in the Dardanelles. He had a good knowledge of geology and paleontology. Calvert conducted several important excavations in the Dardanelles region and played a role in the discovery of Troy. Trail noted, Calvert was, as far as I have been able to determine from extensive reading of his correspondence, scrupulously truthful. So that's a good
endorsement
of the guy. Okay, Italy. During the latter part of the 19th century, fossil whale bones bearing cut marks turned up in Italy. On November 25th of 1875, G. Capinelli, professor of geology at the University of somewhere, reported that the marks had been made when the bone was fresh, apparently by flint tools. Many other European scientists agreed with Capinelli's interpretation. The bones bearing the marks were from an extinct Pliocene whale of the genus Balenotus. Some of the bones were from museum collections and others were excavated personally by Capinelli from Pliocene formations around Siena at places such as Poggierone. The cut marks on the bones were found in places approximate for butchering operations, such as the external surfaces of the ribs. On a nearly complete whale skeleton excavated by Capinelli, man, that'd be a huge excavation. Yeah. The cut marks were found only on bones from one side of the whale. I am convinced that the animal ran aground in the sand and rested on its left side, and that the right side was thus exposed to the direct attack of humans, as is demonstrated by the places in which the marks are found on the bones, said Capinelli. Only the bones on one side of the whale were marked, tends to rule out any purely geological explanation, as well as the action of sharks in deep water. Furthermore, the cut marks on the fossil whale bones exactly resemble cut marks found on modern whale bones. So he reported this to the International Congress of Prehistoric Anthropology and Archaeology. In the vicinity of the remains of the whale I collected some flint blades lost in the actual beach deposits. And he added, with those same flint implements, I was able to reproduce on fresh cetacean bones the exact same marks found on the fossil whale bones. He also noted that human skeletal remains had been found in the same part of Italy at Savona. And after his report, the members of the Congress engaged in discussion. Some, such as Sir John Evans, raised objections. Others, such as Paul Broca, Secretary General of the Anthropological Society in Paris, agreed that the marks on the whale bones were made by humans. He particularly ruled out the hypothesis that the marks were made by sharks and said the marks gave every sign of having been made by a sharp blade. Broca was one of the foremost authorities on bone physiology of his time. Armand de Quatrefages was one among the scientists accepting the Monte Aperto bones as being cut by sharp flint instruments held by a human hand. He wrote in 1884, "However one may try, using various methods and implements of other materials, one will fail to duplicate the marks. Only a sharp flint instrument, moved at an angle and with a lot of pressure, can do it."
Wow.
And the whole issue was nicely summarized in English by S. Lang, who wrote in 1893, "The cuts are in regular curves, and sometimes almost semicircular, such as the sweep of the hand could alone have caused. And they invariably show a clean-cut surface on the outer or convex side to which the pressure of a sharp edge was applied, with a rough or abraded surface on the inner side of the cut. Microscopic examination of the cuts confirms this conclusion and leaves no doubt that they must have been made by such an instrument as a flint knife, held obliquely and pressed against the bone while in a fresh state with considerable force, just as a savage would do in hacking the flesh off a stranded whale. Cuts exactly similar can now be made on fresh bone by such flint knives and in no other known or conceivable way. It seems, therefore, more like obstinate prepossession than scientific skepticism to deny the existence of tertiary man if it rested only on this single instance." A modern authority, Benford, stated, "There is little chance that an observer of modified bone would confuse cut marks inflicted during dismembering or filleting by man using tools with the action of animals," which was one of the arguments that some people were making, is that it was chewing. Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
and yeah, are we almost? We
can wrap it up. I started that late.
Oh, but yeah, his point there was, that there are these sweeping curved marks that you would make, or like this,
right?
Right.
Yeah, with your wrist. Or
yeah,
with your
and the
elbow.
outside edge, like so if you've got this curve and it's curving down, the outside of the curve is very clean, but the inside part of the curve, the cut, because the cut's like a V shape into the bone, the outside is very clean and smooth, but the inside is jagged, right? Because the more of the worked part of the flint would be hitting the bone there, so it would make chips and stuff like that. Whereas the outside part of the cut is only encountering the sharpest edge of the blade. And he's got a picture here. It's tiny, but this was a bone that was chewed on by a shark. So they've got all these teeth, and it leaves these parallel.
Yeah, not only that, but a lot of their teeth are serrated.
Yeah.
Too. Interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing I thought of when he's describing the sweep of the hand is, like, especially if you're at, like, say, a shoulder joint on an animal that you're butchering, if you're cutting around that shoulder, because that's going to be a separate cut, right, the whole leg,
Yeah.
you're going to have this arcing sort of motion that you would have up and around the top of that shoulder.
Yeah. And these were whale bones, so
Fin, maybe.
yeah, no shoulders, but
Hips.
but still, like they've got long bones. Yeah, they have these long bones, and it's also interesting that whole skeleton, all the butchering marks are on one side.
Yeah, like it's found on a shoreline.
Yeah,
on its side.
and they just started taking it apart.
Sweet, it's not rhino.
Yeah.
Oh man, as we get into this further, and you start to look at all the arguments and stuff that are made by the establishment. This activity is praised by the establishment, right? Oh, this is this is what you have to go through. They always say this. Like, you read this often in these big debates.
Yeah.
Where they're trashing you and ruining the reputations of people, or trying to at least, and throwing out evidence and doing all
extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
But then they, like, if it's finally has to be accepted because there's irrefutable, there's just, it gets beyond their ability to skirp it.
Yeah.
Then they start praising the process. Oh, this is like, this is the scientific debate that we're all blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't know. I see that praised by these same types of people in the establishment so often. And when you really get into the nitty gritty of the way this is carried out, it's not something to be praised.
Yeah. Right.
And it's
like
really
a way
annoying. Yeah, is what it is.
Of accepting. It's real now, and also we helped.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's exactly what it is.
I mean, I don't have a problem with, I guess I like these ideas. He's always like, and then he presents it somewhere at this big congress of people, and then they all start bickering with each other. Now I'm like, I'm cool with that. Absolutely. But I don't like the, like this guy's implying that he cheated. That's
what I'm talking about. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then, of course,
he's like, oh, this is too perfect. Because he's made up his mind that no find like that can be real.
Right.
And that's what you can tell by those kinds of, first he's like, well, you may have found marks on bones, but because there's no stone tools, it doesn't mean anything. And then somebody finds bones and tools, and he's like, well, that's too perfect. You must be cheating.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
You've got to keep your goalposts mobile.
That's right. Yeah. Rolling goalposts for sure.
Yep. And I think in this book is the one of the things that made the biggest impression on me was the guy who he had come up with numerous finds or whatever, and he kept getting destroyed. And they're just dismissing everything because they, it's the same problem of like, well, we weren't there, we didn't see the site, and so then he makes a find and he doesn't disturb it, and then he invites everybody to show up and check it out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's just the way they deal with it. You're just like, God.
Yeah. Well, there will be a lot more of that as we keep going through this book. To me, it's even worse on the other end in part 2.
Yeah.
Because then you're reading this stuff that everybody accepts, and you see all the problems that aren't acknowledged.
Yes.
Where if it was an anomalous case, they would be all over that stuff. They would be like, "Look at this problem," and
it's not an extraordinary claim.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's
that's
not
the
an
problem.
extraordinary claim. Then you don't need extraordinary evidence.
Right.
You don't even. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't even this
is why one of the reasons why I don't like that phrase is because it also precludes the opposite.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, because well, your claim is not extraordinary because it's within the standard model. Therefore, you don't need good evidence. Extraordinary evidence or whatever.
Right. Like Oumuamua was made of nitrogen or something.
Just thinking
it's like totally not an extraordinary claim. You don't need extraordinary evidence. You can just do some models and decide that's what it is.
Yeah, do some probability calculations.
Yeah.
Make Pluto a planet again.
That's right.
All right. Well, thanks for showing up, Watcher. That was fun.
Yeah, buddy.
Had a good time.
4 years from now?
Yeah,
Set it in the calendar?
I'll try to do it again a little later. And I know you got a long day tomorrow, so much appreciated.
Yeah, so do you guys.
Yeah,
I'll have to give you some coffee before you go.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, Kyle has good coffee.
All right.
Yeah. All right, you guys can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. Thanks for all the emails. I have a whole bunch in the hopper, so as we're doing these book reports, I'll keep reading them because we haven't read any emails in a long time. So if you wrote us one, it's still possible it'll get read because I got a whole bunch that I've set aside to read. So I'll just be tackling them 2 or 3 at a time as we're doing this book.
Delaying your workout each episode.
That's right. What was the other Grandma? Grandma was the other one that was mad that we didn't get to the point fast enough.
But we love Grandma.
Yeah, with Grandma. I mean, we don't have a problem with workout guy either. He just needs to work out longer.
We love the workout guy. Yeah, you just gotta work out longer.
Get swole, bro. Turn your freaking arms into tombs. Check out the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. It's got all the podcast related stuff there, including the glossary and the snake skins, which is the merchandise store. Check out the TeePublic stuff for sure, because Jeff from the Discord has been making t-shirts. Like, he's got the Johnson, Brothers of the Serpent Johnson shirt now. It's got a Johnson name tag on the front.
Yes.
Me, right? You can wear it to work, bro. Johnson. And he's made, I think he's got a bunch of designs, and I've been adding them to the store, so go check it out for sure. Buy some of his stuff. And we also have the hats. You want a Snake Bros hat? You can get it from the website. There's a link there to, what are they called? It's, So What?
Yeah, but that's
the wrong one?
Yeah, I can't remember the other one.
Yeah. Well, we need to know
Terrible.
this. Yeah, we're terrible at marketing. Brett,
It's something
you're the
and more.
salesman. How do we do this? How do we do this?
Here it is. Ready? It's something and more. What is the something?
Oh, no. And more. I don't know. Don't ask me.
We'll delete this and we'll find the name and we'll just edit it in there.
And join the pyramid scheme. Thanks to so much to all of you who have done that. You can do it through PayPal or Patreon. Yeah, we really appreciate it. Do you see any donation notes, or we'll check that next time?
Yeah,
Haven't even looked.
I've been so busy. Sorry.
Yeah, not a problem. And give us reviews wherever you can. The reviews on Apple Podcasts really help spread the show. So thanks to you guys who are doing that. I see the reviews rolling in, so keep doing that. Really appreciate it. And I think that's it. Thanks to History Shift for sure for making all of our podcasts into YouTube videos. We really appreciate that, buddy. You put tons of work in. Almost 200 episodes now.
Amazing.
That's a lot of
that
work.
reminds me. I decided to do some Watcher math,
Yeah.
and then I forgot all about it.
Oh yeah, you fell asleep over there?
Yeah, a little bit. So, in case anyone was curious, after 191 episodes, that's brain expansion of 5.8 times 10 to the 21st. And if you were thinking of that in terms of the average volume of the human skull, which is 1350 cubic centimeters.
1350.
That's 7.83 times 10 to the 24th cubic centimeters. That is now the size of your brain pan.
Nice.
There you go.
T-shirts, etc.
T-shirts,
Not
etc.
Something and more.
Okay, no wonder.
Yeah. Etc. kind of means.
Good watcher math.
And more.
And more.
Good watcher job.
T-shirts, etc.
T-shirts, etc. Yeah,
We'll remember
get
that.
the hats.
But yeah, the one we're familiar with is So What? S-E-W.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey,
I see what
puns all over the place on this show. Yep,
Time flies when you're having fun.
that's right. And thanks again to Jeff and all the mods in the Discord and everybody else in the Discord and all of you listeners out there. We love you guys.
Always have.
Always will.
Kyle's pointing at me. That was way better that way.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work.